So this is the usual English discussion. Since Bhante Dhammajiva is not present, so I am just facilitating it. So now we are discussing Sariputta Sutta, which is another sutta available in the Sutta Nipata. And Venerable Buddharakkhita and the others are ready with explanations. So probably we can start with where we have stopped, and maybe Venerable Buddharakkhita can give a brief introduction. What's really the content of this sutta?
So, okay, I'll give a brief recap again. So in this sutta, the Buddha hasn't up to this point in time declared Sariputta Maha-Arahant as the foremost in Panya, in knowledge or in wisdom. He has declared other people as the foremost, but he hasn't actually declared Venerable Sariputta's ability. So he asks a number of questions to the Venerable Sariputta. So after the initial part of the sutta is that the Venerable Sariputta meets the Buddha, and then he gives words of praise for three verses, and then the Buddha starts to ask questions, poses questions to Venerable Sariputta, and he answers them. So today I wanted to get to starting these questions. So the way I will tackle it is that I will read out the questions posed by the Buddha, and then we'll move to the answers being given by Sariputta, and then we will do a kind of an analysis. So the Buddha begins by asking Maha Sariputta, when a bhikkhu is repulsed and resorts, this is 958, I don't know what it is on yours. It's the fourth one.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So when a bhikkhu is repulsed and resorts to a solitary seat, to the foot of a tree or a charnel ground, or to a seat in a mountain cave, to various sorts of lodgings, to many fearful things there are, because of which a bhikkhu should not tremble in a lodging with little noise. How many obstacles in the world confront one going to the untravelled region, obstacles that a bhikkhu must overcome when living in a remote lodging. So the Sariputta answers, a wise one, a mindful bhikkhu of, this is 964.
Correct. Understood.
A wise one.
Let me, if you like, I can recite the Pali verse.
Yeah, do please.
So
yeah.
it is mentioned like, Bhikkhuno vijigujjato bhajato ritta masanang rukkamulang susanang va pabbatanang guhasuva. So basically that is exactly what Venerable Buddharakkhita has mentioned. So basically there are various remote places like roots of trees, and then the cemeteries, mountains and caves. Uchavachesu sayanesu kivanto tatta bherava, and those are actually somewhat engulfed with or endangered with various kinds of fearful maybe sight sounds. Yehi bhikkhu na vedehiya nighose sayanasane. So how many of those are available? How many such dangerous sounds, fearful sounds are available? So that is the kind of section that Buddha has asked. Now Venerable Sariputta is answering that.
So yeah, the Venerable Sariputta answers back, as one who understands, I will tell you in accordance with the Dhamma, what is comfortable for one who is repulsed, if wishing for enlightenment he resorts to a solitary lodging. So that's his first answer to the question. So the question is when a bhikkhu is repulsed and resorted to a solitary place, to various lodgings, because of which a bhikkhu should not tremble. The bhikkhu said, the Buddha says, the question is that when a bhikkhu is repulsed and resorts to a solitary seat, how many fearful things are there? How many obstacles in the world confront one? So these are the questions he's answering, and so the the Sariputta answers, as one who understands, in accordance with the Dhamma, what is comfortable for one who is repulsed, if wishing for enlightenment he resorts to a solitary lodging. So here we we get to the point that that one is what is comfortable for one who is repulsed, if wishing enlightenment, is solitary lodgings. So we can be often in the world just sort of not really understanding why the world is such a stressful place and why an existential unhappiness can arise, where we realize that the problem is birth, the problem is the world. It's not that I'm a good person or a bad person, but just the existential problem is what's the problem. Because of existence, suffering is going to arise. So here, he uses this word repulsed. When a bhikkhu is repulsed and resorts to a solitary place, what is he repulsed by? He's repulsed by this underlying existential suffering. That no matter what he does in the world, whether he's rich, successful, famous, whatever it is, there can be this underlying sense of existential suffering, that it is suffering itself that is the fundamental, our existence itself is the fundamental suffering. Normally we're afraid of death, we're afraid of old age, we're afraid of sickness, and these are things to be very cautious about. However, the fundamental problem is actually birth itself. So you can arise in a fortunate birth or an unfortunate birth, and the problem is birth. And once you're born, the whole game begins. So a mindful or insightful monk will realize it's not that I'm sort of arguing and fighting with the world, or it's not even that the world is arguing and fighting with me. It's the whole game is set from birth itself. You know, it's free of charge. You know, you're born in Silicon Valley and you think you're the coolest guy ever and you're so smart. No, you're just damn lucky you were born in a fortunate place that wasn't at war. You were born in Afghanistan or, some place where there's like war. Good luck. It's free of charge. You're going to have a very tough life, generally speaking. And it's just this existential problem. So, all other religions are telling you that, you follow the recipe and then you'll be reborn in heaven and you'll have 72 virgins and all this other stuff going on.
72 what?
72 virgins.
Virgins, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you do a great act, like blow yourself up. There's a suicide bomber. I don't know what was going on here with the suicide bombers here in Sri Lanka, but
recently no one found.
They didn't get 72 virgins, no. And that's the deal in other religions. So it's a better deal in better other religions. So Buddha is a very unique religious teacher where he's not promising anybody heaven at all. He tells you how to go to heaven if you want, but that's just a fortunate birth, and you're born a god or you're born an angel, and then what? You're eventually your life expires and you go according to your karma. If you did good deeds as an angel, as a deva, or as a god, a Brahma, then you go on to another good fortunate birth, but you don't get out of this rounds of rebirth. So this is the repulsion that a bhikkhu really needs to sort of identify, and when you identify that, then the most comfortable place for you is a solitary lodging. So here he describes solitary lodging as a suitable place as at the foot of a tree, or a charnel ground, which is where you would normally burn or leave bodies. In the old days, they would leave them in a charnel ground. You might say a graveyard, or in a mountain cave. So obviously there's also huts and all kinds of other lodgings, monastic settings. So it is very useful. And the word here is solitary. It's not alone. It's solitary. So he's not telling everybody to be a hermit and to be in isolation. He says to be in solitude. So you can be in solitude in the middle of a city or in a town. It's a state of mind. But he recommends natural solitude as well, that are supporting conditions. So depending on your level of practice or your situation in life, then solitary could be, your own little box room in your house. You have a small sort of sacred space, and you sit there and you do your meditation, or you read scripture, or whatever you're doing in that solitary place, a place of solitude. The mental state of solitude is a state of abundance, whereas loneliness is a state of deprivation, that you're without. So solitude is where you like yourself. You like being with yourself. You're not you have no need of other. Everything else is a bonus. You don't feel loss because you're alone and by yourself, and all you have is the root of a tree as a companion, and the earth is your witness. So solitude is a mental state, and you mind your own business, as Dhammajiva likes to say.
Alone but not lonely.
Yes, you're alone but not lonely. Yes. So solitude is not discussed much in the modern times. It's a word. You're either with friends or you're alone. You're a winner because you have lots of friends, or you're a loser because you're by yourself. But the Buddha is pointing to a middle way of solitude and solitary lodging, and this is very important because it can be very frictive, as I mentioned. The fundamental problem is birth itself. Existence is the problem. So you shouldn't misidentify, I'm having difficulty with these people, or these people don't understand me, or whatever it is. No, there'll always be friction and there'll always be misunderstandings. So we have to kind of dial back our friction in the world to a manageable level. And that's where solitude is very helpful. Because there's no point in like going around, shouting on the streets, the problem is suffering, the problem is birth. It'll just be annoying to a lot of people. They'll just think you're a bit of a crazy lunatic. And so you might as well just do your own work and find a solitary community, a community that supports solitude. And that can be very, very... for me, it means living in Sri Lanka. I mean, I like Ireland. I like where I'm from, but they don't support solitude at this point in time. They will support hermitage, but not which is kind of an isolation to some degree, but not necessarily solitary lodgings. So here we're very interdependent on the community. People come, Dayak has come and offer food. We have lodgings, we have great support from the Anagarikas and all kinds of people. So to have the necessary conditions for a solitary lodging is a very substantial blessing to be found in the world and in this in samsara itself. There are very few islands of solitary lodging. So this is like a part answer to his first question, which was when a bhikkhu is repulsed and resorts to a solitary seat. And the question
again, there are certain ones here. So various say, as he is in that particular place, remote place in the forest, so there are various kinds of, so I think you can refer that also, various kinds of disturbances are coming. So it is mentioned here, there are mosquitoes, there are mice, there are flies and all that things are there. But interestingly it is mentioned, so he can bear it. So all that disturbances, all that pains coming through that, he's patiently enduring. So he has this inherent endurability, if we can say. So that becomes a kind of a strength in him, isn't it? So it is not that he's afraid of that, so he always avoid that going to the forest because there are mosquitoes are there, say serpents are there, mice are there, snakes are there, leeches are there, but I'm not worried about it. I'm capable of handling it. So that's kind of a courage is in a way represented. Very interested. So what a kind of a, in a way, a little bit of courage is required for us to go to the this kind of a forest, because otherwise we always want to feel safe at a very best facilities. So I have to have a close by hospital, I have to have a close by insurance corporation, I have to have a close by bank, close by playground, close by supermarket. So that is what people are looking forward, isn't it? So when they are going to buy a new house, so what are their best or rather the main priorities? Maybe a good school so that my kids can go there. So likewise, but going to a root of a tree, going to a forest is complete opposite. You have nothing basically. You have no much access to the very nearby hospital. You don't have much access to another dispensary or insurance corporation or bank or any other facility. You are really remote. For that itself, you need a fair kind of courage, isn't it? I'm taking a risk. Kind of a risk it is. So let me take that risk and see whether I can bear it, whether I can endure it. The kind of a courage is there.
Yeah, I was really surprised recently. The villagers were asking me at Poya and the full moon. They often come to my hut, and I try to instruct them on walking meditation. But then they were always asking me, are you not frightened of the snakes? Are you not frightened of all the things? And I'm really surprised because they actually live in the local village here. And, also I grew up in a country where there are no snakes, no snakes at all, and no dangerous spiders and no dangerous animals whatsoever. I mean,
all are done away with.
No, it's not because of the ice age. Ireland was covered by ice until 10,000 years ago, so it doesn't have that diversity, and it's an island. So it didn't have the migration of animals and creatures onto the island, and we don't have these animals because of lack of diversity. Actually, here in Sri Lanka, it's full of diversity. Yeah. So it's much less diversity of species. So we don't have snakes at all. Even though in England they do have snakes, but we don't in the next island. But even recently I had a snake on my path for a few days on the steps going up. So you could see it every day. We just sat there for about 3 days, and eventually moved off. But like last week, we had one of the yogis reporting on seeing strange objects or faces when they were meditating. And later on, I was thinking about it, and I believe that they were experiencing visual hallucinations where they were, there's a sort of a circuit in the neurology of the brain which helps you to identify faces. But when you're actually meditating, sometimes you don't have any distinctive object, and then this circuitry sort of just fires up, and it'll present you with faces. And those faces can often be grotesque or slightly weird. And that's a kind of it can be just a visual hallucination. And similarly, you can have auditory hallucinations. You can have hallucinations of smell, taste, touch, because these circuits are in the brain, and sometimes they'll just fire up. And you have to kind of also have that courage to go through these unusual objects that actually a lot of people have, but they don't give any attention or notice to. But when you're sitting meditating, you can also, you have more time to sit and notice. So you think, oh my gosh, what's going on here? But it's actually a normal phenomena that we don't normally notice, or it may not get the exact conditions to arise. So that for that little 11-year-old, she sat through all visual hallucinations, and that's fantastic, because most people will get pushed away by that fearful object and sign. So there's the external fearful objects when you're in solitude, and then there's the internal inside your own body and mind, all sorts of things. And that's why we're in solitude. We're not alone, and that's why it's very useful as a community of meditators. Sometimes we can support each other with, oh yeah, that happened to me too, and don't worry about that, and it's not significant. Then that's very helpful to support that solitude, because we have that underlining repulsion towards the existential suffering itself.
Yeah, anything the others can add, can contribute, anything? So they all have no fear at all, no afraid. no afraid, not afraid at all. By the way, very interesting. I mean, kind of Now, Buddha is asking from Venerable Sariputta about not being afraid of. Nothing to add, yeah. And here further it is mentioned like, so there are even certain people are there, certain, thieves are there, and animals are there.
Yes.
And even to them, he's not afraid.
Yeah, so I'll just repeat what the Buddha, Sariputta answers. He says, nor should he fear followers of other teachings, even when he sees the many fears they pose. One seeking the good should conquer any obstacle he encounters. So, yeah, this expands on the different kinds of obstacles we will fear. Like these days, again, people can be very sensitive about other points of view. Mm-hmm. That somebody says this and somebody says that, and somebody makes a joke, like I was making a joke about, going to heaven and getting 72 virgins. That was Dhammajiva, actually. I cancelled his call. Again, this is another fearful, is that somebody has a different perspective. And everybody's entitled to have their own perspective and have their own view. So we should be careful not to be afraid of that and not think, I don't agree with that person, therefore that person is wrong, or I'm wrong, or, we can all exist together. There are many, many different perspectives and views. However, it does come back to truth. And for me, what I find in Buddhism is that you can test the teachings. So I've always been a person where it's not that I'm not able to accept things on a belief basis, because everything begins with belief. Like if somebody sells you a car and they say this is a good car, it works. Well, you should test the brakes before you go flying down the hill. Not because you don't believe in them, but that it's verifiable for yourself that this is a properly functioning car. And I find that I can test the teachings. And the Buddha doesn't just, he's not saying lofty things that, sound really great and, that'd be wonderful. He gives you very pragmatic advice here. So like this discussion with Sariputta is very pragmatic. They're talking about flies and creepy crawlies and
gadflies, other flies.
Yeah, you'll meet people that you won't agree with and they won't agree with you and they'll be arguing with you. Exactly. And, it's very practical. Yeah, you in other religions it's like, God is going to open the doors of the cities and welcome you in. Not in Buddhism, I'm afraid. You'll be told that you'll face difficulty and followers of other teachings will be offended by you. And I find even like walking around as a monk when I'm overseas, like sometimes people will come up and like they'll say, "Have you heard about Jesus?" They wanted to explain Jesus to me, and I'm saying like, yeah, I think I have heard about Jesus actually. He's famous. I did hear about him. And I don't need to hear about it. You know what I mean? And then the next one is afflicted by hunger and illness. He should endure cold and excessive heat. The homeless one, affected by these in many ways, should remain firm, exerting energy. So here again, we face this challenge, of variability in weather, in conditions, and again, a lot of people will put a lot of effort. Like I was making fun with a monk recently who was packing so much stuff. I said, "Oh my God, where are you going with all this stuff? You're just going away for 3 days." I usually go away for a month or more overseas, and I have less stuff. And like I always just feel like I'm not foolish about what items to bring with me, but nevertheless, I'll put aside my fear of, well, what if something way worse happens? Well, okay, I'll deal with it. Like
that's interesting. That that there's a very famous story by Achan Cha about it. That he wanted his students to go with him. He simply go. It's a very little thing, but the others, once he instructed that they are going for a long period of time, so they gathered so many things. And they thought that they are going by the train because they have turned the direction to the train station. But they arrive at the train station, but they are not getting to the train. They are going along the train path, the train track, by the foot. For after a mile or something, then the others who are with a lot of packages and bags, they can't bear it now. They have to remove things now. So now they start dropping things. So whatever something unnecessary, so they drop. And another train station they arrive, okay, they have to drop some more because it's still heavy. So likewise, after they arrive, so many train stations, okay, only the essentials were available. Maybe they have took the train. So it's a very interesting, very practical, lesson. That's a very interesting way that Achancha has taught. So when he announced that I am going for say 3 weeks of time, if people, you guys are interested, you monks are interested, you can join. It's an open invitation, so many wants to come, and they packed many things. But he was going by, Tudon, simply by the walking. So they can't hold all these baggages. Ultimately, they have to drop. So very interesting, and how, as he mentioned, so it's a kind of with very basic, maybe medicine or something, but everything else we have to totally depending on the others. So we are expecting others, lay people, to help us on the other way. So how, in a way, we are learning that parapatibaddame jivikati. My life is solely dependent on others. That is a reflection that Buddha may ask us to reflect often. In that sutta, Dhamma Sutta, the second reflection Buddha is mentioning is you guys have to often reflect parapatibaddame jivikati. You are not an independent guy. Yeah, you have to depend on others. So others' generosity is something that you are dependent on. So don't be conceited about yourself, your whatever achievements, but you are totally dependent on someone else's generosity. It's a very interesting way how we are balancing ourselves. So practically, isn't it? So otherwise, when I am thinking, okay, I am the one teaching something very fascinated, fantastic, excellent teaching, and I am the one who knows the lay people don't know anything. So then you might get conceited. You feel kind of a extraordinary person. But when you are taking your ball and going to their house asking for some food, it's very interesting how you come down and you become part of them, and you are very innocent. Even though you have a good knowledge, fine, but still you dependent on them. So a very beautiful balance is made so that you are not making any conceit or any personality out of anything. But you are a well-grounded person. You know what's really going on and you help them, you teach them. That's also there. But you get their support also. A very beautiful balance is there.
This teaching of Thich Nhat Hanh, interbeing, inter-are. So it's not a normal dependency either. There is an interdependency, and like one of the reasons I would say that a lot of the monastic traditions in other religions die out is that they tend to get very hermity and sealed off from the world. They own their own premises, they own their own monasteries, and they don't do pendapat. They don't have exchange with other people. They're not interdependent.
So what exactly went wrong with them? Now, say for example, that's how people are thinking. Okay, I don't need to need your support, so let me
I'm independent.
I'm independent.
You don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
You don't tell me what to say.
Yeah.
I don't need to listen to whatever you have to say.
Yeah.
So
I have my own crops so that I can eat, and all these things
and
are
I
available.
can control everything.
We are completely independent.
Yeah.
A group.
Yeah.
So how they went to a downfall?
Well, eventually they become so detached from society, then the society don't care about them, and the king will decide, oh, okay, I'll just take all this land. Just kill these useless fellows and take the land. It's very easy. That's how the monasteries died out in the Middle Ages. The kings just took over all their lands because they had become so independently wealthy. So even today, like you'll see that some religions will get a charitable status, and then they accumulate a lot of wealth, and then people are very angry about it. Then the tax will go in, and they get into corruption, and it'll fall apart eventually. But because we live as mendicants, because we live interdependent on society, it's fair. If people are not interested in what we have to say, they don't support us, we leave.
Exactly. Simple as that.
It's completely Darwinian. They like what we're beneficial, we're not harmful, okay, they'll put
They'll
up with
support,
us.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Kind
very
of
simple
kind
but
of a mutual
fundamental.
understanding, mutual help, mutual respect.
But it's a very fundamental, something very fundamental about it, like how one can coexist with other people in the world and yet have such a very different goal. Most people want wealth, children, land, properties, so on and so on. But we're like, no, I'm having none of that. But how do you exist with that kind of mentality or approach? Like, we're completely anarchists. We're completely going in the opposite direction.
But it's still,
and how can we fit in? So this is a huge in this teaching is a whole blueprint of this, like a profound law that so many other so-called religious people fail. Like these days, there's all these gurus, and man, they are rich. Like with their Rolls Royces or whatever else is going on. One Rolls Royce for every day of the week. That's my Monday morning Rolls Royce, and this is my Tuesday, and this is the Wednesday one. And I'm taking my private jet, and I mean this really happens. So they're not. In the long run, they might impress people, but they're not building a sort of a pathway to liberation.
Still, no Rolls Royce in it.
Well, it's just obvious that when you have something, others will be greedy and want to get what you have, and as soon as you put yourself up, or you have more things, then you're likely to lose that. People are going to be jealous of you, so it's best just to, it seems, to strive for enlightenment. And if we're just, if we're not striving for material things, if you're looking for material things, then people are going to suspect you of, I think people will suspect you of corruption, or like what's that going to help you to get to nirvana is like material things. They're not going to help you get there. And so we can easily get sidetracked by more things, material things, and we lose our way. Actually, it's not even. I mean, you're setting yourself up for problems if you have more material things. So. And it just distracts us from actual work we have to do. So I think I don't know, I try to stay focused on cultivating myself, and whatever that takes.
You being a Zen monk, what's their lifestyle like?
Well, in Zen practice, it's people are we're encouraged to follow the precepts of there are 10 precepts, and they're basically the same as what you could expect. I mean, no stealing, no lying, no sexual misconduct, and so on. But there's also not.
How the support is coming from?
The support, I mean, in America, you have to have some way of making money. So the place that I was at was practicing 6 months of the year. They would practice as intensive meditation and more intensive practice of meditation and studying teachings and Dharma talks and just internal practice. And then the other half of the year was accepting guests to come and spend time in the wilderness and have. So we had retreats like yoga and meditation retreats and poetry retreats and a lot of yoga retreats. So people paid a lot of money, and that's how they made their money. That's how they survived, was out of having guests 6 months of the year. And during that time we also practiced, but it was more work practice, and it was still, encouragement of silence, and but it was more of a sort of the teacher there called it their Pindapada. It was their alms round, was having guests for 6 months of the year, and we shared our practice with them, taught them how to meditate. The guests were encouraged to come and learn how to meditate, and we did meditate with them in the mornings and the evenings. The guests were invited to come. So, we shared our practice, and we shared the wilderness and the facilities, people being able to come from the city and enjoy the practice, and paying money. So that's how we survived financially. When I came here, I didn't see too much. I thought this is really like Mahayana practice here, because we've got the guests coming here as well, and they're getting the benefits of meditation and
no difference.
Yeah,
no
it was
difference.
really this pretty much the same, but I do see, it's a little bit different, because we are depending on just regular people for our food and supports, whereas there at this place I was at, it was more a lot of. You have to have quite a bit of money to come and stay at that place, and it seemed that most people that were coming probably were more like middle class, or maybe upper middle class, or even very well-to-do. Whereas here it's just common people are supporting us. So that seems a little different. And Zen centers in the United States that I've seen, they seem to be more ordinary. Like the place I was at before I came here was very extraordinary, because they had actually quite a corporate infrastructure that they had developed over about 50 years, and but most Zen centers seemed to me to be more down, like at a grassroots level, supported, and just eking out their way, trying to support themselves. And I don't know how, but Zen tends to be more ordinary people, and it tends to be more people that practice Zen aren't monastics. They're more like lay people, lay practitioners. Even the monks don't hold up the Vinaya standards of our tradition, where they can marry, the monks can marry and have children and have jobs and so forth. So it's not aimed at strict monastic way that we have here. So it seems much more in that way they're more ordinary than us, because they're more ordinary sort of people can be monks in that tradition. So and they can have children and have a job and so forth. So it's interesting. It's in some ways they're kind of like embracing ordinariness, and where we're embracing a more of a secluded, more a little more different. You have to be pretty extraordinary to become a monk. You're taking on a lot of precepts and a lot of restrictions that ordinary people just can't do. So it's just different. That's a little
good.
bit.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you please explain again how is it that the monk society is interdependent within society rather than much more dependent?
Yeah, so normally when you're a child, you're dependent on your parents, and then as you grow up, like my own rule is if you're old enough to steer a car, you're old enough to steer your life. So like these days, that's seems to be getting older and older. People are in their 20s when they leave the dependency of their parents. But ultimately, the goal is that they become independent. So then, as an independent person, you're earning your own salary or you're earning your own way in life, and you don't need that much support from your parents. But you still are dependent a lot on society in various ways. So then as you become more mature, you become interdependent. You realize that you cannot achieve your goals without the support and help of other people. So if you're one man doing a one-man job, you get one thing done. If you're in Japan, they have this expression, one man does one man's job, 2 men together do 11 men's jobs. So it's this idea of 11 is 2 like 1 beside each other. So they do 11 people's jobs. So that was a very interesting experience as a monk when you take on the rules and the precepts and suddenly I can't dig or I can't cut plants and I can't do all of these things I would do normally. But then I have to ask other people and help other people and they have to help me, and it starts to foster.
You have to wait.
Yeah, you have to wait and be very patient, and sometimes you have to give up waiting. It's not going to happen at all. And other times it's very easy.
That's the thing. I think the not using of money also, the lesson is that.
Yeah.
So when you have enough money, you can immediately ask someone
just
to do it. Just do it. Just buy it. You go to the supermarket, just buy it.
Yeah.
No big difference.
Yeah.
But when you have nothing, basically, then you have to always look for someone, and they have to come their own time. You have to be patient.
Yeah.
So, I mean, through that, practically we are learning these skills. So otherwise, we like that quick performance.
Yeah.
So how can we
one-click
shopping?
One-click shopping.
One-click shopping.
Yeah,
yes, exactly. Download.
See
and,
it. Press one.
Done, and next day in one hour's time, things are with you. But now it's completely different. You have to wait. You have to report, and they have to come. They have to come the correct time. If you are not there, they'll simply go. You have to come another day. So it feels like funny, or it feels like disorganized. Oh, that is not the best way of doing it. But on the other hand, we are learning how to cope up with things, and how when there is no electricity, how can I cope up with it? When there is no water, let me go to another place or have a bath, and whatever the way, how I can adjust with the situation. So in a way, even in the monastery also we get those challenges, and when we go outside, they're full of challenges, isn't it? So people are trying to have all things in methodical, well organized, everything is in order, but when things collapse, they can't do anything because they are not ready for such thing. Now say for all of a sudden something collapse, maybe electricity cut is there, maybe water cut is there, people are not ready, they don't have anything to survive. So likewise, now things are well integrated and extremely dependent, and they don't know how to independently live. Independent in the sense, I mean, with little things. How they can live with very little things, because they have very complicated needs. So I feel that there are many areas we can learn in that sense. One thing is that how much we are dependent. On the other thing, how can we be independent with little things. So both sides are there, isn't it?
I'll precise my question a little bit. Isn't interdependent when both sides are dependent upon each other, and this is where you make interdependence. But I would say that the monk community is dependent because the lay people community is not dependent on the monks. I would like to see how I would like to be explained how the community is dependent on the monks, because the monks community, they need to be provided with food, they need to be provided with shelter, with water, because without all of these you cannot really make a community and study and evoke wisdom. But I don't see how the regular people are dependent on the monks.
Well, it's on many levels. Like, for instance, like we're forest monasteries. So in all over the world, you'll get these like temple monasteries. Temple monks, temples that are sprouted up. So you're in, say, Perth, and you have the Sri Lankan Vihara. Well, they have a Bodhi tree and they have ceremonies, and that place acts as a platform. It can invite in the forest monks or various teachers, and they teach to the community. But you really see it's something you have to watch very carefully over time. Like, yeah, in the good times, maybe lay people don't need the monks or the teachings, but when, I assure you, in bad times, they definitely do. The first place they'll go to is to a monastery. So if you're a migrant and you go to Perth, if you're Sri Lankan, first place you'll be going to is the monastery, because it's a place to meet other people. And you hopefully will meet decent people at that place, rather than if you go to a casino, it's not necessarily guaranteed you'll meet a decent person. And then when you run into difficulties like aging, death and sickness, family members die, then they want to come and get some kind of teachings or reassurance from the monastery. So, in fact, you can see a lot of dependency of the community on a monastery. And if it's a good monastery, if it's a good monk, I'll tell you, that place is hopping. It's so busy. It's so... it's such a wellspring of benefit within that whole community. It brings together community, because as long as you keep on thinking that everybody is independent and I mind my own business and I don't need any help from anybody else, I can just get it on Amazon, like, that is very toxic and corrosive to this community. And if there's any faculty that human beings have, it's that we're super communal. Like, if you look at the animals, they are not able to work with each other the way we work with each other, as humans work with each other. So we as a community can achieve greatness. And I see the monastics as like catalysts of a lot of a particular kind of community. When you go to a work in a factory, that's a community around a product, we'll say. But when you go to to this religious kind of community, that is about enlightenment and a path out of suffering. There's nobody else doing this. There's no other community supporting this, and this is the highest teaching. It really, I mean, I'm not saying that just shouting at some people like this is the highest teaching. No, you have to see it for yourself. If you cannot see that less and less suffering is a great value, and particularly in this modern time where there is every materiality, there are incredibly rich and as Venerable was just saying, like at the Zen center, like why was it that upper middle class and elite people were going to the Zen centers? Because they were still suffering. At the end of the day, they were still suffering, and they were still looking for a way out of it. And in fact, there's very little that lay people can do to support us. And in fact, the support that we give the lay people is immense. It is absolutely immense. And like sometimes I'm aghast. I'm shocked at how lay people can so undervalue the teachings. Like I'll be teaching overseas, and it's a free teaching and everything else, and then people are upset that they have to pay for the bus ticket, and I'm like, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? Like, this isn't even a coffee for you guys, and you think it's a rip-off because somebody asked you for a bus fee. Like, I thought this was for free, and I was like, no, there's still costs involved in having this meditation thing, and it would always break down at that level. If that group were not willing to be generous and supportive, the whole thing fell apart, and there was no community. And it was always that kind of self-centeredness that it's like, I don't need this and blah, blah, blah.
Actually, Sri Lanka had that kind of a very, very cohesive culture where what we call as the Vevai Dagabai Gamai Pansalai. So there's a tank, huge tank where the water gathers from the the rain, and they are using it for the harvesting. Veva Dagaba is the pagoda, Gama the village, Pansala is the temple. So this is the kind of the integrated model that we had in the ancient Sri Lanka. Where the temple is as he said, where the spiritually how the whole community is uplifted, they are very cohesively kept, and monk is the one advising them spiritually as well as their whatever the other matters. So the issues are completely sorted out within the center of the monk, that the temple. And the pagoda, again, they are coming and worshipping, and kind of a blessing is there. And then the village is there, the water is there for the paddy fields. So likewise, the very, very beautifully, it's very, in a way, in that community, in that temple, that pagoda, so it's a very independent, cohesive system. But now things are fairly, kind of gone for a very complicated kind of a situation. Now things are not available like that. So now we are losing our status in a way. So now monks are not having their proper role model. They are not playing their proper role model. So people might feel like, they guys are useless. You don't need monks. Or they are not, they are not behaving properly. They are not giving a proper example. And they are not practicing, then they are not giving kind of an inspiration. So like these things are happening all around the world. So therefore people might have a wrong perspective. But on the other hand, as he said, if a particular monk or community is doing really well, they are giving a very good teaching and explaining the Dhamma properly. And there are many people who are coming, looking, they are really fond of doing it. And they even spend a lot of money for them. And there is no condition even. They simply come and pay immense amount of money. They feel it. They start enjoying it. They start experiencing it. So likewise, there's a beautiful saying now. When we are going on alms round, Pindapata, so the typical economic view is that we are benefiting, lay people is giving, lay person is giving. So lay person is generous, so he is giving something. I am the one benefiting. So this is the typical modern economic terms that we are, what's the kind of a thing. There is no transaction, but he simply gives, I am just a beggar, so please support me, I am going on Pindapata, I have no food. So you have to cook and give me, that's all. But the opposite is going on, where, we are going on Pindapata, if they are not supporting, so we are going to another one. So he missed the chance. So we can look at, it's a kind of a, kind of a big picture, how we today, one person has many things, another person has nothing. So as he said, the birth really matters actually. So why you are reborn to a well-to-do family and another person is born to a completely, extremely poor family. So there's a huge amount of karma get involved. So during the alms round and all these other activities, so by giving someone, so you get tremendous amount of joy in one sense, and you are generating certain amount of karma, so that bear fruits. That is also another dimension that we need to think of. So it is not only the monk benefiting by giving, but I am also benefiting. If I am the layperson, by giving, I am benefiting more than the monk. So that is something very difficult to understand when we are, we can understand since we are born Buddhist and we grown up in that culture, so we can understand how appreciative when we see that when I see a monk has come to my house asking some pindapata. Tremendous amount of joy is there. I quickly gather something. If something is there, I quickly find it and give it the best available. So kind of tremendous amount of joy is arising, and I can even think about it. How much, oh my goodness, after a long time I found a good monk who has come and asking for a pindapata. That kind of mentality is there. So therefore, it is not really the monk benefiting, but the lay person who is contributing tremendously benefiting. So therefore, both sides in a way benefiting. Yeah, you have anything?
Another example for the difficult times you can probably describe better is like Dhammajiva said, how after the
Tsunami, exactly.
And maybe in other times during COVID, I don't know.
Tsunami, everybody came just to the temples.
The center was flourishing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, not only they didn't come even for meditation. When their whole houses were slept away, so there is no place to go. They all gathered to a temple. Many people are there, so monks and all are arranging their, the health things and their food and everything. So this health center become the temple. Their gathering place become this temple for many months even. They didn't have nothing to eat. They have nothing to wear even, and they don't have any shelter to stay. Everything was washed out, abolished. Till for many years even sometimes they were maintaining those facilities, and that is somehow things have happened. Yeah.
In that example, tsunami and people come to monasteries, but still even let's take the Western world where there are still horrors and tsunamis and all sort of nature disasters. People, well, there are no monasteries, but people still do find peace within church and houses of God. So I don't know if it's really dependent on the monks as much as it depends on the person's belief in something that will aid him. And taking this example of a monk going to a door, is the person really earning or is he losing? Because he earns if he gives to a monk, but if it was a homeless person knocking on his door, he would probably not give him food, which when you compare the two, that gives rise to selfishness and ego, because I will give to that monk, but I will not give to that person in need. So where is that difference?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Typically, a generous person would give to both. A generous person would give to both without much restriction. If I have something, okay, if there's a beggar, okay, I am ready to give. If there's a monk, okay, for him also I am ready to give. But in terms of the other side, that how the accumulation of karma happen, it depends on the qualities of the receiving person also. It is not just I am contributing towards that generation of the karma. Another attribute is the qualities, good qualities inherent in that receiving person. Now, if you compare two persons, so one person is maybe the beggar. Okay, he's homeless, nothing is there. He's, sometimes he's thinking, going through some wrong thoughts and completely depressed. So he has completely poor. So he's coming and asking. So one way of support that you are doing. Another monk, so he's maybe mentally uplifted. He's going on a path where this lust, hatred, delusion, and all these defilements are now he's on check, and how those things can be abandoned. So he's going on a very high spiritual path. To him now you are giving something in terms of a support of that development of that path, not merely just to fill his stomach, but by supporting him, so he is continuing the path. So it's a kind of a gesture, it's a kind of an appreciation of what he is doing. So in that sense, so the merit that you accumulate by giving to a monk is more and more than you giving to a beggar. So that is, you need to understand. So this, when we are talking of merit depends on so many other factors, not the amount of food that you are giving, not merely your mindset that you are maintaining during the time, but even the qualities that the receiving person is maintained, developing, that also matters on how much merit that you are accumulating. So that's another attribute that we can't actually logically think in a way. We need to, in a way, a little bit of faith is required for you to accept, okay, there is something like this, so still I can't understand, I can't verify, it is not that scientific, true, but something like that is there. So there are suttas explaining that. Even Buddha is telling, okay, I have spent, I am a king, I was maintaining a huge amount of, spending a lot of money, but I didn't get a good receiver. I spent millions of money, I didn't get a receiver. But I was quite generous. And on another occasion, okay, there is just a monk, or rather a beggar, someone was going to give him some food. But that beggar found there's a monk also coming, and he offered something from his thing. Buddha said, this person was so lucky than I was a king, by the way, at that time. I didn't earn that much of merit there like this beggar. So it is dependent on the receiver. So therefore, the receiver is one attribute we have to think of when we are talking about the merit power, particularly on this generosity.
Thank you. I would expand my questions, but we're not with much time left. Thank you very much.
Maybe just a final one to think about is like, just think, what goes around comes around. Like this kind of law of merit that we're talking about. What goes around comes around. So I get very annoyed when I hear people talking about how they're really rich and they're really this and they're really that because they work hard and because they're special and because other people are stupid or something like that. But why have they got all of that benefit? So you can sort of just say, well, it's just random. People are randomly lucky. People are randomly coming into wealth. People are randomly beautiful. It's just a distribution of the population. Well, fine. If it's such a distribution of the population, well, then we should just tax everybody. Whoever gets the benefit, we just say, hey, you've got a lot of that, just share it with others. But that's not how we are either. We say there is a merit. There's we support a merit in things like we acknowledge that somebody has done well. So there's a skillfulness. What goes around comes around. And the one that we don't see as coming around is our birth itself. We tend to think that that's not a merit. That's just random or something like that. The problem with science these days is that unless they can absolutely see it, they don't believe it. So the problem is that there is a force of merit. There is doing good for goodness' sake. If there is no goodness in the world, if there is no if the world is amoral, that there's no harm, there's no lying, there's no anything, and that's what you hear from some people. Like, this is extremely delusional. Like, it's the opposite to wisdom. So if you have this idea that what goes around comes around, then you're more careful. You're more inclined to be communal. You're more inclined to be like this super. Like the human species becomes like a super organism, and we can do things as a collective. Then, whereas if you have this other idea that it's just random, nothing matters, there is no lying, there is no theft, there's no nothing. As long as I benefit, that's all that matters. I don't know if you can sit with that idea, those two diametrically opposite ideas, and look at that world. Like one and look at the other. Open your eye to one, open your eye to the other. Then it's a very dark world. Whereas the light is in this one where what goes around comes around, and do good. Just do good.
Mm-hmm. That is the typically mentioned as the samadhi, the right view, where you are accepting that right view. Okay, there is something. If I do something good, there are a tremendous amount of good benefits, or the positive benefits. If I am doing the wrong thing, so I may have to pay for that. Something like that. So you are becoming very much a responsible person. So accepting the karma, accepting, believing, trusting, and dependent, and inheriting karma. So that's one stage that we typically tell as the samadhi, the right view. It has two sides, the mundane and the supramundane. So mundane side is this. So accepting of this moral responsibility. Okay, I think time is up. Interesting.